as determined by Glamorgan Spring Bay Council in April 2017, all ordinary and special meetings of council are to be audio-visually recorded and streamed live. A link is available on the Glamorgan Spring Bay website to the YouTube platform where the public can view the meeting live and watch proceedings of the previous council's meetings. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and Regulation 33, these video audio files will be retained by council for at least 6 months and made available for viewing live as well as online within 5 days of the scheduled meeting. The written minutes of a meeting, once confirmed, prevail over video audio recording of the minute. So I declare the meeting open, and once again, councillors, welcome, staff and members of the public, and declare the meeting open at a couple of minutes past 5. My understanding is all councillors are present in attendance. So agenda item 1.3, declaration of pecuniary interests. Does any member of the council have any issues with the agenda that's placed in front of them or that you've had over the last few days? No? Okay. So agenda item 2, confirmation of minutes of workshops. 2.1, ordinary meeting, the 12th of December 2017. The recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 12th of December 2017 be confirmed as a true and correct record.
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Second. Councillor Wisby. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you. 2.2, annual general meeting, December the 12th. Recommendation that the minutes of the 2016-17 annual general meeting held on Tuesday the 12th, 2017 at 7 be confirmed as a true and correct record. Someone care to move?
I'll move.
Councillor Steiner, second it. Councillor Woods, all those in favour?
I'm abstaining from that. Mayor Campbell wasn't present at that.
Okay, so shall I have a show of hands for the recommendations? Councillor Woods, Councillor Steiner, Deputy Mayor, myself, Councillor Parker, Councillor Farmer, for, against, Councillor Crawford and...
I wasn't present, so I can't vote for.
Okay, thank you. Motion has been moved, passed. 2.3, special meeting on the 9th of January, that the minutes of the special meeting held on the 9th of January 2018 be confirmed as a true and correct record of that meeting. Councillor Woods, Councillor Steiner, all those in favour? Unanimous. Motion is carried. Thank you. 2.4, workshop held on January 9, 2018. The recommendation there is that council notes this information, and that's what we'll do, and we'll move on now to the Planning Authority section, which is agenda item 3. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2005, the chairperson hereby declares that the council now is acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 3 of the agenda. The recommendation acts that now council acts as a planning authority.
I'll move that council now acts as a planning authority.
Seconder, please. Councillor Farmer. All those in agreement with that? Unanimous. Thank you. Three 1, outbuilding floor 14 Florence Street, Coles Bay. Where are we? The recommendation for that is on page 15 under item 11. So somebody care to move the motion?
I'll move pursuant to Section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approval Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015 that the application for an outbuilding at 14 Florence Street, Coles Bay, DA 2017/265 be approved, subject to the following conditions 1 to 18.
Seconder for that motion. Deputy Mayor, open for discussion, councillors. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just wondering, on page 11 it says the outbuilding is located on an existing slab and so on. I was just wondering, through you to the planner, how long's the slab been in place?
Town Planner, thank
Through
you.
the Mayor, I don't have an exact time frame for that, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. The problem with this application, councillors, you might remember that we, I think it was number 11 came to council, I think last year or something. It was for visitor accommodation, and there wasn't a spot for them to to turn around on that property, and so they would need to reverse out along that right of way, so across 4 accesses. So that concerns me, if this outbuilding is built in that location. So I actually think it doesn't comply with the performance criteria for the 1 access only, where there's 2 accesses to that property. The outbuilding does not comply with clause E5 6.2 of the performance 1, because by creating another access in this location will be unsafe and reasonably impact on the efficiency of the road, having regard to it being located adjacent to a right of way that services, I think, 5 properties, of which 1 does not allow for forward movement exit. So that concerns me with this actually application. Remember when it came to council, it's those things that in the future impact that we pass something because we want to allow the ratepayer to do, to have what they want, but then, it comes back and bites us down the track in that, perhaps makes it unsafe putting that outbuilding there. So I can't support that because I think it does have an impact on local traffic use.
Thank you. Any other councillor have any comment? Councillor Wisbech.
Through you, Mayor Kent, to the planner. I see that the applicant may have seen the objections that were lodged in respect to this. Is that correct?
No, what we are commonly requested to provide a summary or a copy of the representation, so they would have received a blacked out version of the representation, so it was de-identified.
But, sorry, I didn't read this just before this, but when I did read it, it appeared that the applicant knew who put the representations in from the information.
I think when it can be interpreted as to who made representations by the nature of the issues raised.
And so why do we allow that to occur? Why wouldn't an application just sit on its merit and be assessed on its merit as lodged? Why do people require a copy of representations? And the reason I ask this is because it could, going forward, actually make people not want to put forward an objection.
Look, this is certainly not the only instance that has happened. I'd say 3/4 of the matters that are brought to this council, we would have provided copies of the representations. And there's certainly been several instances where council's been presented with a response from the applicant to those representation issues. And more often than not, it's necessary for me to actually contact the applicant to discuss what the issues are.
Or it isn't, sorry.
It is. So I need to bring these matters to the applicant's attention so that I can ascertain, the significance of those.
But it would only be of significance if they were planning matters though, wouldn't they? For example, the use of second-hand building materials, as an example, is not a planning matter. So my concern is it appears that all matters raised, whether they were relevant to planning or not, has been provided to the applicant.
Well, yeah, look, certainly in this case, issues were raised with drainage of the right-of-way. So that's not a relevant planning issue at all. But, if there's an opportunity to sort those issues out, then we'll try to through the process. Or at least bring it to the applicant's attention that when they're in the building and plumbing process that they've got some issues to attend to.
But isn't that already covered under the building permit and the plumbing permit? That's not a planning matter. That's
no,
my
but
point.
I can't see any issue with bringing that to the applicant's attention. It's like I say, it's a very common standard practice.
I think the common standing practice is of concern then, because, it does actually open up, for people to be hesitant in putting forward an objection. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Any further comment, councillors? Councillor Farmer.
On the diagram on page, the new piece of paper we got just a short time ago, which was replacement of page 3, I presume. Is that through you, Mayor, to the planner? It's the one you just handed out.
I just wasn't very clear in the photocopy.
On the photographs that we have here, I see there's a garage, or it's a blue door on the building behind, which I just can't see it now. I've just had it a minute ago. So is there the entrance to to this property at 14 Florence Street runs off that right of way?
Yes, the right of way is part of number 14. The right of way belongs to number 14, and the adjoining 4 blocks have access.
Oh, right. So they have a right of way over there, over the owner's property.
Yep.
Right. And just a third query as such. Why can't the garage go back to the required distance from the road, which is I think 5.3 for a garage?
Yeah,
5.5.
5.5.
There seems to be, like space in the yard there for it to go back to its correct, within the provisions of the building regulation. So why does that have to be, as Constable Crawford said, right up near the road? There's join there now.
The applicant has requested it in this position so that it does not interrupt the views from the adjoining property on the high side. So if you look at figure 1, the aerial image, the adjoining block to the north would have a clear view over through number 14.
Yep.
And this building would be built to the front and would largely retain that. So that's why the applicant's proposed it where it is. To me, the question is, does it affect the streetscape? And I don't think it does, principally because it's at the end of a cul-de-sac. So there isn't really no consistent streetscape in many cul-de-sacs. It's not a straight bit of street where there is a consistent building line. There's always variability at a cul-de-sac.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor. That's just one clarification.
Any further comment, councillors, before the motion is put? No further comment. I put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Woods, Councillor Steiner, Deputy Mayor, myself, Councillor Parker, Councillor Farmer. Those against, Councillor Crawford and Councillor Wisby. The motion is passed. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 3.2. Recommendation is up on page 36. This is to deal with the modifying food services within the Gulch at Beechenhoe. So the recommendation, somebody care to move the recommendation, please? Hunter, Councillor Woods. Open for discussion, councillors? No?
There's no motion yet.
Oh, you haven't read it, sorry. Carry on.
I move that in accordance with section 34(1)(b) of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, as provided for by the provisions of section 3 of Schedule 6, Council initiates the draft amendment to be known as Draft Amendment AM 2018/01 to delete only if takeaway food premises from the use qualification for food services at clause 35.2, use table for particular purpose zone for the Gulch. B, that in accordance with section 30(01) of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, Council considers that draft amendment AM 2018/01 is practical and consistent with the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy 2010 to 2035. C, that in accordance with section 35(1)(a) of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, as provided for by the provisions of section 3 of Schedule 6, Council considers that draft amendment AM 2018/01 satisfies the provisions of section 32 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. D, that in accordance with section 35(2) of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, as provided for by the provisions of section 6 of Schedule 6, Council directs that draft amendment AM 2087/01 be certified in writing, affixed with the common seal of the Planning Authority. E, that in accordance with section 35(4) of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, as provided for by the provisions of section 3 of Schedule 6, Council directs that a certified copy of the draft amendment AM 2018/01 be given to the Tasmanian Planning Commission within 7 days. F, that in accordance with section 38 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, as provided for by the provisions of section 3 of Schedule 6, Council directs that draft amendment AM 2018/01 be placed on public exhibition for no less than 28 days. And G, that if no representations are received during public exhibition, under section 39 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, as approved for by the provisions of section 3 of Schedule 6, Council directs the General Manager to advise the Tasmanian Planning Commission in writing that no representations have been received.
Thank you. Open for discussion, councillors. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to the plan. I'm not sure whether it's a typo, but I couldn't quite understand this sentence. I may be able to now that I'll read it out alive, and I'll apologise if I do. But council staff have been approved by one of the leaseholders to develop... Oh, this is on page 27 too, by the way. 4.5. I'll start again. Council staff have been approved by one of the leaseholders to develop a master plan for the area that would have regard to a number of matters, including...
Through the Mayor, that's a typo.
Thank you.
It should read, council staff have been approached by one of the leaseholders.
Thank you. If I may, Mr Mayor?
Yep.
So this application has come to council because of that approach by one of the...
Through the Mayor, no. That's sort of a separate issue, so just provided there for a bit of information and context. No, this council has, through developing the current interim planning scheme, there was a request to the Tasmanian Planning Commission for to make this change, which hasn't eventuated through that particular process. So this amendment now is to make that change here. It's certainly an issue that has been discussed with at least two of the leaseholders in the Gulch who are in favour of this change.
Thank you.
Councillor Wisby.
Through you to Mayor Kent to the planner, it says council, you just said something like council has through developing the planning scheme, requested the change. So when did we request that change?
It was through the report on the representations to the interim planning scheme. So I don't believe there was a specific representation raised, but the issue was identified, so this is before my time, as something that it was needing change, needed to be amended to fulfil the purposes of the zone.
So you're saying council agreed to that
Yeah, there's certainly been written documentations
at a
given
council
to.
meeting?
I can't recall the details offhand, but there's certainly written documentation from council to the Tasmanian Planning Commission through the interim planning scheme process, requesting this change be made. I actually had a verbal agreement from the Tasmanian Planning Commission that they would make that change. It just hasn't eventuated through that particular process. So here we are trying to do it through this process.
Because I can't recall council, I don't know if any other councillor here can recall council voting on that, so.
Well, all I can comment is there was written correspondence from council to the Tasmanian Planning Commission.
But the only way council can make a decision is in a council meeting, and so.
I think that's sort of off track anyway. The issue before council is this current request to amend it now.
Yeah, well, it's actually not off track, because the thing is, if it's on the table because council have requested it be on the table, and that's the background to it, then it's not off track, it's actually on track. And I think this matter here needed to actually be workshopped by councillors, because it is significant and it is a sensitive area of importance. So I think it is significant.
Through the Mayor, the matter really is, do you want to make that change or not? That's all this is about. I don't think it is actually particularly complex, and certainly doesn't need to be workshopped. I think this council sitting as a planning authority can make these decisions.
Yeah, that's my point though. I don't recall council sitting as a planning authority or as a council when we made that decision. I don't recall it, so that information would have been good.
Before our time.
No, it wasn't before our time.
Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. I support Councillor Wisby on this. The Gulch is a really, really sensitive area and really, really important, and I actually think it needs to be workshopped. I actually went and spoke to, probably 2 years ago, to the person that's got one of the takeaway food places there, and I thought he was wanting to do a restaurant or cafe, and I thought that was a really good idea. However, when I actually thought about it for a bit longer, I'm not actually sure what the proposed impacts will be for that proposed change. And people will be aware that it's Crown land, and if you've actually got a takeaway like a cafe, or if you've got like a restaurant, you're putting a lot of money into that, and then comes the opportunity of maybe government saying, well, this is a bit of prime real estate, we're looking for a little bit of money, so that's one implication it might have. I'm not saying it will have that, but that's why I'd actually like to really discuss it properly. I'd like to discuss the whole Gulch area, right? Not just the change of one use, to include the food services, the proposed change in this one. So as a council, we haven't really looked at any of the particular purpose zones. Further in the agenda, there's some more. I know there has been changes where council hasn't been consulted, so I would actually think that I would like to see this come to a workshop and actually look at the whole Gulch area, and maybe there's other areas in that as well that maybe need a change as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Any other councillors' comments before I put the motion?
Just a question, Mr Mayor, to the planner. It's going to be, I presume it's going to come from a takeaway to a sit-down, just a small cafe. Is that what they're referring to?
Essentially, yes. So the current scheme allows a takeaway only, So sit-down eating is out of the question. And certainly some of the leaseholders would like the option to provide sit-down eating through the current zone, and all this is providing is the ability to apply for that. So any application would have to meet a number of tests that are in that current zone. So any new building in the Gulch is automatically discretionary and has to be judged against various design and landscape considerations. And there's also provisions for car parking and other issues. So it can all be considered if someone wanted to apply for a cafe, but at the moment they can't get in that front door.
Yeah. So, no doubt you've had discussions with the leaseholder there. What I was thinking that was happening would just be basically a deck as against a new building, as you just say. It's, I mean, that hasn't been covered yet, but I presume that's what the intention is of the leaseholder?
Well, there's certainly existing buildings that could be converted.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Okay. So he can take over lease of another building and do what he wishes to do, if he gets this approved today.
Well, yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? In planning, which is not where we normally defer to a workshop, can this matter be deferred to a workshop as a procedural motion?
Not as far as I'm concerned, but somebody will pick me up, I'm sure. I think it's all been said. It's a matter of whether you allow the process to go through and then all the plans and the car park and all that sort of stuff follows suit at a later date.
Mayor Kent, that's not my question. Can it be, under planning, be referred to a workshop?
I will refer that to the General Manager.
Mr. Mayor, this is a simple form to initiate an amendment. It's not an amendment. The amendment has to go through the process, which comes back to Council for consideration after it's been advertised and the community has input into it. So it's only an initiation, it's not a final step. So we're not changing the planning scheme as of today. We would only change the planning scheme after it's been consulted and thought about. And
Councillor Crawford?
I think the process is different. If we vote for this today, then that process is already set in motion, and then that goes actually to the follows through, goes through to the TAS planning or the planning approvals, right? Whereas if we don't approve this, then it doesn't do that. So it's not exactly the same. Once the process is started, similar to other things, it's actually then it goes and they make the final decision of whether that will change or not, just like to the councillors.
And Mayor Kent, my question still hasn't been answered, sorry. Can the matter be procedurally put through to a workshop? Because there isn't a time limit on this, it appears.
Mr. Mayor, you can't defer something from a planning authority to a workshop.
Thank you. Thank you. So, any further questions, councillors, before I put the motion? Okay, all those in favour? Councillor Woods, Councillor Steiner, Deputy Mayor, myself, Councillor Farmer. Those against? Councillor Wisbech, Councillor Parker and Councillor Crawford. The motion is passed. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 3.3, endorsement of informal public exhibition process for the draft Glamorgan Spring Bay Planning Scheme. The recommendation is on page 49. The council, sorry, it's on 49. Someone care to have that motion?
Mayor, I'll move that council endorses the informal exhibition of the new planning scheme.
Second, please. Councillor Wood. Open for discussion. Any discussion, council? Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. The concern was this to once again saying that it's going up for public exhibition for the draft Glamorgan Spring Bay planning scheme. So I would think that it was part of our responsibility to actually be aware of what we're putting out for public exhibition and not expect perhaps ratepayers and residents and that to comb through documents and actually have a look at all of that. So I'm not aware of all of these, and once again it's something that I'd like to be workshopped. For instance, already we can see down here, on page 48, particular purpose zone, Dolphin Sands. It says no changes. Well, there's already been changes made to that previously that didn't come to council. So, you know, I actually, once again, don't endorse that the informal exhibition of the new planning scheme goes out for public consultation till councillors or have actually workshopped it. I think, yeah, I think it's a bit rude actually to be putting something up for public exhibition when we haven't really workshopped it and not really aware of what's going on.
Further comment, councillors? Councillor Wisby.
Thanks, Mayor Kent. I agree with Councillor Crawford. Maybe it was 18 months, 2 years ago that we last sort of looked at this, and I think as councillors, you know, we should know what's going out to the public. We should understand it. And it hasn't been workshopped for a long time, and I don't understand it, and as Councillor Crawford said, that is our role. So in its current state where we haven't workshopped it, I won't be supporting it.
Thank you. Any further comment, councillors, before I put the motion? Deputy Mayor.
Mr Mayor, I was involved in the last planning scheme. I had just become a councillor and we were going through the changes to the planning schemes to incorporate 2 planning schemes, or more than 2, but originally Glamorgan and Spring Bay planning schemes, into what is now the Glamorgan Spring Bay planning scheme. I think it's really important for the community to have the opportunity to see these amendments in an informal sense, knowing the angst, the unhappiness and a whole lot of other emotions that came with the original Glamorgan Spring Bay planning scheme. So I would support this going out it's an informal sense, and councillors having a workshop as part of this informal process, exhibition.
Thank you. Any further comment, councillors? I put the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Councillor Woods, Councillor Steiner, Deputy Mayor, myself, Councillor Parker. Those against, Councillor Farmer, Councillor Wisby, Councillor Crawford. Motion is passed. Thank you. Councillors, agenda item 3.4, amendments to the Southern Tasmania Regional Land Use Strategy. The recommendation is on page 68. Someone care to move the recommendation?
No longer access it. Oh, sorry. Did I miss one?
Yeah.
I missed one. Sorry.
3.4.
The council notes the attached correspondence and authorises a response to be provided that endorses the suggested amendments and expresses strong support for the medium-term review of the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy.
And we have a second up. Councillor? Councillor Farmer? Open for you've read it, haven't you? Yes. Open for discussion, councillors. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. I'm just wondering if some of the other councillors could point me to what the suggested amendments are, because I actually found it very difficult to follow this document, and we won't be able to focus on that unless I've actually got more clarification on what this all means and what we're actually, I certainly am a bit bamboozled by the whole lot. If you look at page 65, there's someone, it's not that I haven't read it, so I'm not asking anyone to do a reading for me, but if someone could explain it to me, I would be really appreciative. I think this is one that needs to be workshopped too.
If I may,
Any further comment, Planner?
the amendments to the regional land use strategy are solely technical in nature. There's no policy change whatsoever. The amendments are necessary because this new planning scheme has to be assessed and found to comply with the regional land use strategy. And because the government has changed some of the zones that can be used and rebadged things, so for instance, the current scheme has a significant agricultural zone. The regional land use strategy specifically refers to that zone. In the new scheme, there won't be a significant agricultural zone, it will be an agricultural zone. So the provisions in the scheme have had to change just to reflect terminology and other technical matters. So there's no policy change whatsoever, it's just a technical process. So this is simply to just endorse that process. I think the more important part of the Minister's letter is that expressed a medium-term review, so a review through the later part of 2018 on the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy, which is long overdue and I think is a positive sign from the Minister for Planning.
Any further comment from councillors? Put the motion. All those in favour? Deputy Mayor, myself, Councillor Parker, Councillor Farmer, Councillor Steiner. Are those against? Councillor Wisby and Councillor Crawford. Motion is passed. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulation 2005, the chairperson hereby declares that the council is no longer acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning Approvals Act 1993 for Section 3 of the agenda. Shall I move that, please?
I'll move the council no longer acts as a planning authority.
Second it, please. Deputy Mayor, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. It's 22-6. Thank you. Agenda item 4, public question time. I think there must be everybody here that knows the rules of public question time, unless you want me to read them all out. It's question time. We don't want any statements, or it's purely and simply ask a question. If we have the knowledge to be able to answer your question straight away, we will. If we haven't, you will be informed through the regular process by the next meeting. So does everybody understand that? Okay, thank you. Sue O'Rourke, thank you.
My question is about green waste. It's in 3 parts. When the green waste periods were first introduced, were they not from Sunday to Sunday? Correct me if I'm wrong. Why now have they been reduced by 1 day, which mightn't seem much, to Monday to Sunday? This doesn't allow for many ratepayers, weekenders, and especially older residents who may need to rely on family to come on weekends, with the tip being closed on Saturdays, to dispose of their green waste adequately. That's the first part. The second part is, why can't we have 3 green waste periods a year, with the one in January, one say in May, and the one, of course, in September, October? And the third part is, whilst there is some advertising of the green waste periods, it could and should be more freely available throughout the municipality.
Thank you. Works Manager, would you like to comment to that question, please?
Yes, through the chair. The dates for this December were, Monday the 8th of January to Sunday the 14th of January. I take the point of Sunday to Sunday, and we'll look at that in the future. It does give that extra day opportunity. The 3 green waste disposal times per year, the 2 were selected purely because they were the busiest times of the year when most people take advantage of it, but we certainly can look at an additional one in May, because they are successful, a lot of people use them, and so that shouldn't be a problem. The advertising part of it, I'm not sure what the question was there. Was that about the
Well,
type
it's
of advertising?
Yes, basically, because a lot of people that we've spoken to did not realise
It was on.
that it was on, and not everybody has access or are computer literate so that they can see it on the website. So perhaps a specific flyer stating that that's when it's going to be.
Through the chair, I try and put it out to as many areas as we can for each one. It's advertised in the Mercury, the Examiner, it's on the website, it's in the C-Speak, it's in the Bishno local paper, I think it is. It's on the council notice board. We sort of run out a little bit of different areas to advertise it, but we'll try and put it out into as many forums as we can. So I'll take it on board and try and think of some other ways to do it, unless it's in the local shops as well and their notice boards or something.
Thank you. Sue, are you happy with the response
Yes,
at this
thank
point,
you
Tom?
very much.
Thank you. So Jeff Baker, Jeff,
Mr Mayor, could you please inform us how many megalitres to date Tassal have drawn from the PLOSSA scheme, how long they continue to do it for, and the reason for them doing it?
thank you. I'll pass that through to the General Manager. It's an operational issue. General Manager, can you respond to that now, or would you prefer?
No, Mr Mayor, I'll have to take that on notice. I don't have that information.
Thank you. Keith, Mr Pike, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Good evening, councillors. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm sorry I'm asking you to cut this short, so it's a bang straight question to you, Mr Mayor. A yes or no answer would be fine. Thanks. You're standing for the state seat of Lyons. So I'm wondering if you're going to be standing down now until the election is held, as the precedent set by the Lord Mayor in Hobart, on leave to do your campaign.
The answer is no.
Thank you. My second question then to you, General Manager, is can you tell me or explain to the community how and what strategies have we put in place to look at how we separate the costs out, i.e. Mayor's car, because that's ratepayers, can't be used for campaigning. So all of those things will have to be addressed. So will you be putting in place an action for that?
As far as I'm concerned, the Mayor is not using his car for electioneering, so
Right. Will you have me monitor that, please?
yes, absolutely.
Thank you. And you'll let us know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Agenda item 5, information. Oh, sorry, who, sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, Mr Pimble, sorry mate.
That's all right. Mr Mayor, councillors and ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to address the Chair on the tip shop being built at Swansea. Now, it's 6 years in the making. It was 6 years since it was thought of, and I think it's a bit long in the tooth. And I would like to know when it's going to be built.
Thank you. General Manager, comment?
Mr Mayor, as far as I know, we've received a draft report from the consultant and we're considering that report. So we will know within a couple of months as to whether it's feasible or not to build it.
But
And
that was 3 months. That was 3
The
months.
report
that
will come back
3
to
months.
council for a decision.
That was 3 months back.
Well, we can't
Mr Mayor.
determine when the consultant actually gives us a report. It was only received last week.
The other point is, all I'm on about, the other question was, the actual building, you have $60,000 in your account for the building. Now, why can't you put that out to tender?
Well, as I understand from the General Manager, is waiting for the report from the
I
consultants.
mean, it was against, the council couldn't do the actual job once
Yeah.
upon a time.
Yeah.
And all I'm trying to say, if you got $60,000,
Yeah.
why can't you put that out to tender, where a firm would be a golden opportunity to take that?
Okay, so let's, we've had a response.
Yeah.
Let's put it on notice, and you'll get a response formally within the next council meeting.
See, there was two.
And we can't debate it anymore.
No, but
basically.
could I just say, there was two reports done. The one when it was conceived
Yep.
and the one now. So how long does it take?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, so agenda item 5, information reports, General Manager. Councillors, it's up back to us to ask the General Manager the questions based on his reports. So does any councillor wish to start?
But my question is to the, my question is to the Works Manager. My question is actually to the Manager Building and Marine Infrastructure, but it will have to be through the General Manager. Concerns have been raised by businesses and locals alike about the lack of wharf area that's now available for resident and visiting commercial fishing vessels at the Tribunna Wharf and Marina, and that some vessels are not able to remain in the port due to the lack of space. Vessels are leaving the port, but they're also taking their spending out of the town. In addition, the berthing of vessels in the fuel depot has on occasions impeded the use of the refuelling facility. Mr Mayor, I believe an urgent workshop should be called to address these concerns of the business community, and as well as providing an updated information, plans and costings for the future shared use of this area. And ideally, the updated plans and costings should be provided prior to any workshop to enable councillors to sufficiently research the matter. I think it is a particularly important matter at the moment with the concerns of the business community. Thank you.
Any comment, General Manager?
Mr Mayor, I'm unaware of any businesses. They certainly haven't contacted me. I sat in a 2-hour meeting today to talk about a master plan for the rest of the marina, and that's what's been commissioned. So councillors will be involved in that master plan as soon as there's a draft plan for it.
Lovely.
Including parking. So we recognise that it's build it and they will come, and they've certainly come, and we need to do something about it now. So
I think it's important, Mr Mayor, if I may, that we do, there is a real issue at the moment for the commercial fishing fleet, particularly the visiting commercial fishing fleet, because they can only unload and then they have to go. There is just simply nowhere for them to stay, is my understanding.
Through you, Mayor, I'd restate this, that it is an unloading and loading wharf, and the visiting vessel should load and unload and then go out to a mooring. That's what it's designed for. There's no room to sit, 2 dozen vessels at the wharf.
With great respect, Mr Mayor and General Manager, the photo up there on the wall is of the original commercial fishing vessel wharf that was demolished a number of years ago. When that was in operation, there were a large number of commercial fishing vessels. We now have a large number of commercial fishing vessels coming into our port. I think it's a real shame that if we are now going to exclude those commercial fishing vessels, because they do contribute significantly to our town. We should have made sufficient provision for the commercial fishing fleet. We are a port.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You've made your point. General Manager's responded accordingly. Thank you. Any further comments, councillors, on the General Manager's report? Councillor Steiner?
Mr Mayor, just further to Deputy Mayor Arnold's comments about the marina, I believe that there is the infrastructure, the Marine Infrastructure Section 24 Committee, I believe also that they haven't met for quite a while, and I guess this would be an instrument that would actually relay information that's coming in from community and businesses through their reports to council. So I think it's imperative that they meet on a regular basis.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford?
Thank you, Mayor Kent. On page 80, just as an example, I've asked in the past if there's a reason that council decided that they weren't going to put in the budget estimates and that because, you know, it might go out for tender or that. And I'm actually asking again, if once the job is finished, completed, if the figure, the budget figure can go in that column once it's completed, because there's actually no reason why it shouldn't go in there.
General Manager?
Mr Mayor, if all the councillors want that, I'd be happy to put it in there, but it is distributed 7 days prior to this meeting, all that information, so in detail.
Well, this is, Mayor Ken, I actually find this format quite good, and it's quite good just to look at it and see it's very clear. I would appreciate, I'm not sure other councillors want that, and just asking for once they're completed that we actually have a figure in this graph.
Sure. Any further questions, councillors, of the General Manager's report? Councillor Crawford?
On page 84, under on page 85, the grants, it says the final RPHS grant. Just wonder if we can have more explanation on that, please, and where will that grant go? What will it go towards?
General Manager?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it was the extension of the RPH grant through the Tasmanian Health Service for 3 months. When they terminated the agreement as of December, they extended it for 3 months, and that was the final payment on that 3 months, which wasn't budgeted, and it's been paid directly to Mayshore because they deliver the service.
Any further councillors' comments? Councillor Stoner?
I've just got a couple more, Mr Mayor. Just following on from the question from the floor, it seems to me that green waste disposal, particularly if it's in terms of the bushfire season, to me it would seem that it's probably better to have it sort of October, November, because that's when you might clear up your yard to get rid of any of that green waste that needs to be removed to prevent fires or prevent them from getting out of control. In January, I think we're well into the bushfire season, so that's the only comment I'd like to make there. And the other one is on page 122, and that's the NRM report. And I'm particularly interested in the home energy bulk buy partnership that's progressing well. I'm just wondering how much the community are aware that that is actually on offer. And also perhaps to get a little bit more information on that from the manager responsible for that.
So we moved out of...
122 NRM report.
Oh, NRM, okay, sorry. Yes, I'm with you, thank you.
So it would be good to have just a little bit more information about how that scheme is progressing and how many people are, you know, for instance, taking it up in the municipality.
Mr Mayor, that's actually not part of this agenda item, but we certainly, I'll certainly take that on to.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. We'll keep going. General Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. On page 86, I just want clarification on number 4,
That's to do with the ferrying of money through for the Swansea boat ramp. So we're actually getting the income, but we're also spending it. So it's related to number 4 down in the materials and services being way above budget as well.
And on that same page, where it's number 9, it says invoicing not complete. I just want to ask if there's a problem there or...
Mr Mayor, no, there's no problem.
Councillor Woodby.
Thanks, Mayor Kent. On page 75, it says a contract for purchase is being received for the old SES building in Swansea. Was that price the government valuation plus all real estate costs, or exceeding that?
Through you, Mayor, it was the valuation.
So valuation, but not real estate costs.
It was the valuation
Commission.
which council agreed to sell it for, yes.
And page 75, the community, what is it called? Distribution to relevant community organisation. Oh, sorry, the Community Connect session. Do we have a date on that at this point for Swansea?
Not at this stage, Mr Mayor. In the next week or so I will.
Thank you.
And page 85, visitor centres, number 4 said, so its employment benefits are higher than, well higher than the budget. It said will level out over time. Do we know what time?
By the 30th of June, that will all be balanced.
And following on from Councillor Steiner, the free green waste, I actually forgot the free green waste was on. I'd read it, forgot it, but I think on the town entrance signs it's a good place to actually put a sign that we all drive through often. Our town, you know, where we can advertise. I think that's a really relevant thing to advertise to the community that free green waste is on, and people will be reminded and tell each other. So I think that's a good free spot for us to advertise.
Thank you, Councillor Wisby. Any further comment, councillors? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. Just one last one on page 100. Under the Glamorgan Spring Bay Art Prize, when that in the past that's been on a long weekend, and the date was set to extend, you know, the tourism peak season on that shoulder. I'm just wondering how it's come about that it's changed to February now and not in the weekend.
We'll have to take that on notice. Talk to the relevant people. Thank you. Councillor Farmer.
One more on the actual wharf situation, as we have at the present time, as Deputy Mayor mentioned before. I'm on the actual committee that we haven't met for some 6 to 7 months because we haven't been able to get a quorum together to meet. We did take steps initially to reduce the number of people on the meeting so we could reduce the quorum. I just asked the General Manager perhaps we can revisit that again to see if we can get the amount of people that's required to form a quorum down so we can actually get a meeting, because we've had to cancel the last 2 meetings because we haven't been able to get a quorum. So therefore we have a situation now where decisions have been made without the councillors or the committee as such has been organised, hasn't been involved in. So maybe we should revisit the amount of people on this particular committee.
Mr Mayor, what decisions have been made without referring it to the committee?
Well, on page 106 about revamping the wharf regarding to for the Osprey, the Navigator's Osprey, and there's been buildings taking place there that we haven't actually seen
Mr
plans.
Mayor, they were approved by council before your time.
Before my time, were they? Yep. Oh, well, I didn't see the plan. I'm sorry, General Manager. I wasn't here at that time. So, but my point is raised that the fact that we can get probably the number of people on that, because what happened about 12 months ago, the council put out for a number of other people, like members of the community, to be put on.
Yeah, expressions of interest.
And it got up to about 15 people on that committee, and they were reduced it down, I think, to 12 now. But even still, we can't get a quorum.
Right.
So,
noted by the General Manager, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Quite a few of my questions have been answered, but I have, sorry for my flipping pages. On page 100, with regards to the Manager of Community Development and Administration, with regards also to the Christmas Parade and Carols, the Spring Bay Hotel donated $500 for the best float, and prize helped to attract some high quality floats. It would have been nice sort of to have put in there the winner of it, and I would like, for information purposes to everybody here, that it was Olivia Outram from Tassie Terrariums was the winner of that prize. Also, I have had people who are on the scenes over on the wharf area. There's a one-way sign, no entry sign that is near the information centre, but when you go into there, you actually have to turn, you drive into it, but you have to turn out of it to be, you're already in, you've already entered into that area. Is it possible for that sign to be brought forward to the point of entry?
Works Manager, you had a response?
As through the Chair, I think I know what Councillor Woods is talking about. There was supposed to be, the main no entry sign was supposed to go in the centre of the hatched area where the speed cushion was going to go, where the bus zone is. And we couldn't put it there because it was in the way, because there's no structure there at the moment. The reason we put that sign a little bit further back was purely to keep it away from the side of people when they're walking across the road and that, but through that public access from the toilets. But I'll check it out to see if we can't shift it up a bit. That should be fine.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr Mayor, just one more. On page 90 of the it's Manager of Works, this was brought up in our meeting in December with regards to town maintenance, and ongoing general maintenance is being carried out in all towns and areas to ensure an acceptable level of overall presentation is maintained. Unfortunately, yeah, I know dead grass doesn't look tidy and nice, but these yellow dandelions, they grow and they look really pretty when they're not mowed. And I apologise for my sarcasm there. But I hope when it comes up to tender or comes up to decision making with regards to especially Tribunal and Orford, that we don't entertain the idea of outsourcing mowing the grasses, because our town has actually looked quite untidy since we've done that. That's just an observation and a concern that's been brought to me many, many times in this community. So I'm just sort of putting it on the table. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you, Councillor Woods. Councillor Wisby.
Mayor Kemp, just going back to the wharf situation, so you're saying that there's no issue with having vessels come in and then vessels told to leave the port and go on a mooring that's non-existent, so basically leave the area. Not an issue for this council?
No,
and
that's not what, if you've interpreted what I've said, I've passed the question over to the General Manager.
Yep.
And that was his comment, and then we had a comment from Councillor Farmer to re-establish the marine people and put it back into their area, and they come back with whatever recommendations they want, and obviously the General Manager and the operations people will view that and make recommendations to the council. End of story.
well, yeah, it's a very important end of story because it's having a significant...
I understand, Councillor Wisby. I have had the same
Point of order, Mayor Kemp, you're interrupting. Point of order, and you actually need to stop when a point of order is called under meeting procedures.
I'm not accepting your point of order.
Oh. Yep.
Thank you. Moving on. Any further questions from councillors? Okay. So the recommendation that the management reports be received and noted. Someone care to move that?
I'll move.
Second. Councillor Farmer, are you with us or somewhere
Yes, I am,
else?
Mr Mayor, I'm just,
Okay, well, I need a second that. So who's going to second? Councillor Parker. Okay, so all is in favour of the recommendation, hands please. Councillor Woods, Deputy Mayor, myself,
Of the recommendation, can you clarify, please?
to receive the General Manager's report.
To receive, okay. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll start again. Councillor Woods, Councillor Steiner, Councillor Crawford, Deputy Mayor, myself, Councillor Parker, Councillor Wisby, it's unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. Agenda item 6, members of section 24 committees. Comments from councillors?
Yes, if I may, Mr Mayor, can I ask Councillor Steiner to repeat her observation, with regards to the NRM? You know, when you were talking there, please?
Information which was duly noted and will that happen?
In
Point
what
of
part?
order, we're on 6.1, Mayor Kent, not 6.2.
6.1 and 6.2 form minutes of the Section 24 committees of council, so it's included in that 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay.
So,
There's no point of order.
so I'm sorry, but can I please ask Councillor Steiner to ask the question again, because I didn't hear, I wasn't listening because I was in another report.
Councillor Steiner.
Through you, Mr Mayor. My question was about the home energy bulk buy partnership
Thank you.
and how that is progressing, and also whether people in the community are actually aware that there is this opportunity to bulk buy solar panels and all that sort of thing.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillors?
Mr Mayor. You may be aware this weekend that the Harley Owners Group are visiting the town. They basically booked out the town, 200 odd riders. I was under the impression that they were going to have a gymkhana at the Orford Cricket Oval. Here it looks like it's the fish fry has been conducted by the Rotary Club on page 116. At the Tribunal Oval, can we clarify which oval they're using?
No, Mr Mayor, I can't.
All right.
The first I'd heard about it was when you talked to me about it.
All right.
Councillor Farmer.
Yeah. Well, it's plenty.
Mr Pollard can answer it, Mr Mayor.
Just through the chair, the group that are coming are actually utilising both grounds. I think it's the Orford Rec ground on Saturday for more of a public display type thing, and I think they're over here at the rec ground in Tribunal where they're going to be putting met public as well.
On Sunday. Good. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? No further questions. Agenda item 7, officer report requiring a decision. This is the voluntary council amalgamation and community consultation. Recommendations are on page 130. I have somebody to move the recommendation, please.
Discuss.
Second, Deputy Mayor. It's open for, well, you're going to read the recommendation?
No,
No,
I've just
gonna
moved
move
it to
the motion.
discuss.
Okay.
those in favour.
Yep. So, all those in favour?
To discuss, Councillor Crawford.
So it's Councillor Wisby, Councillor Parker, Councillor Farmer, Councillor Woods, Councillor Steiner, Councillor Crawford, Deputy Mayor and myself. Thank you. Open for discussion, councillors. The recommendations are there, so comment.
Just a comment, Mr Mayor, then I'd start off, I mean, somebody's got to start somewhere, that we actually treat each of the recommendations as a separate discussion item.
Well, I think we've got to respond to where we're at. So the recommendations have been...
Mr Mayor, with great respect, no we don't.
Well, we don't.
That we are actually at the moment in a motion to discuss, which all councillors have the opportunity to make a statement or discuss the matter, debate the matter.
Yep.
And at the end of that, a motion can come out of it. Whether that motion looks like the recommendation or not is irrelevant. So I'll start with your permission and council's permission. There is no doubt the question of whether we proceed to the local government board review has become a vexed one. It is fairly clear to me, at least, that the reason is because the issue became one of amalgamation. Amalgamation or merger, call it what you will, is the only potential outcome from any board of review. It may well be that after a long and involved process, the board finds that there are no valid reasons for Glamorgan Spring Bay to amalgamate with anyone. The broader issue for me is that there are other forces nipping at our heels to break up Glamorgan Spring Bay. There is a proposal on the table from our northern neighbour to split Glamorgan Spring Bay in the vicinity of Cherry Tree Hill, although there is a suggestion that this can't happen for the sustainability of Glamorgan Spring Bay if it was not amalgamated. The Break of Day Council report states this stems from informal discussions between Break of Day and Glamorgan Spring Bay Council, and that begs the question who instigated the informal discussions and attended them. I'm aware that some community meetings have been held between Break of Day Council and those northern Glamorgan Spring Bay communities that would be involved in any split. I attended the forum arranged by Glamorgan Spring Bay and facilitated by Dr Eva Rizika, where the split was discussed and included on the butcher's paper, despite it not being an option that had been included as one of the options in the South East Council's feasibility study. The Bichno community members in attendance were quite adamant they wanted a say on the potential split. Council initiated a survey as part of the process to determine whether we would proceed to a board of review. That survey asked the question, do you support voluntary council amalgamation? Which I believe further entrenched in people's minds that this issue is not about a local government board of review, but amalgamation. That survey showed that 36% of respondents favoured an amalgamation of Clarence, Sorell, Tasman and Glamorgan Spring Bay. Clarence, by the vote of their ratepayers, then decided to withdraw from the South East Council feasibility study, which in my mind at least changed the game plan. Would those people who supported the four-council option support amalgamation of three essentially rural councils? I'm not convinced they all would. 7 councillors initiated a poll of the communities to try and gauge the reaction to the change of the game plan. We've been criticised by some in the community, and at least one of us has been criticised by the highest local government authority below the minister. The reality is, though, that as individual councillors and initiating this poll, we were acting in accordance with Section 28C of the Local Government Act. The outcome of our communication with the community has been enlightening, to say the least. It soon became evident that many people did not vote in the council-initiated survey because they did not understand it or because there was not an option to stay as we are. They simply did not want to say yes to amalgamation when they did not support it, but did not see how that could be conveyed in the council survey, so they chose not to respond. It has to be remembered that the decision today is not about amalgamation. It's about whether we proceed to a board of review that may result in a recommendation for amalgamation. The issue then becomes who makes the decision if the board comes out strongly in favour of amalgamation. Section 214 of the Local Government Act is very specific in the way a board review is conducted and who will receive the final report and recommendation. That responsibility lies with the Minister for Local Government, and Council cannot release the findings of the report until after it has been published by the Minister. It must remain confidential until then. The current Minister for Local Government has given Council an assurance that, as Minister, he would not accept a recommendation from the Board for amalgamation if an affected council was opposed on reasonable grounds. What exactly are reasonable grounds? If a well-credentialed board makes strong recommendations for amalgamation, would Council doesn't believe it's in the best interest of our community, or our communities don't want to amalgamate, be reasonable grounds? I somehow doubt it. If we were to counter an amalgamation argument, there would need to be significant investigation into the opposing argument. Throw into the mix a state election sometime soon. Will this current government and Minister for Local Government be returned to office to ensure the assurance of the Minister that he won't accept a recommendation for amalgamation is honoured? What happens if we have a change of government? Certainly, the Leader of Opposition has made it clear that her party does not support forced amalgamations, but we don't have the same assurance in relation to opposing a recommendation of amalgamation on reasonable grounds. Unfortunately, my crystal ball is a little cloudy in relation to state elections. I supported the motion to defer the decision at the special meeting for what I believe was very good reason. I was not prepared to take the risk of committing this council to something that may send us on a path of amalgamation if the broader community is opposed to amalgamating or boundary adjustments with any or all of the councils nipping at our heels. What we need to be sure of is that the path we take is in line with the thinking of the community. I acknowledged earlier that the board may well recommend no amalgamation, but are we prepared to take that risk? On the surface, it appears that the only part that is voluntary in this process is whether we go into the local government board review or not. I still have grave doubts about that path. I would like to take the opportunity to thank those residents and ratepayers who contacted me to express their views in relation to amalgamation. In particular, I would like to thank those people who had in fact voted for the 4-council option and who now indicated that they opposed the 3-council option. Today's decision is undoubtedly one of the most important ones this council will undertake since the 1993 amalgamation of councils. We have to be sure it is the right one for the future of our area. Finally, I'm perplexed by comments in the Mercury on Thursday, January the 18th, where it's reported that the Mayor stated, "I just find it all very, very strange. There has to be a reason for these people to do that. Maybe they have vested interests. I don't know." To refer to fellow councillors as these people is totally unacceptable and shows little respect for council and elected members. Of course we have a vested interest in this matter. The word vested can mean conferred, bestowed, devolved, entrusted, assigned. Taken in that context, our vested interest is compliance with the Local Government Act Section 28, Functions of Councillors, in particular 28 1B and C, which require us as individual councillors to act in the best interests of the community and to facilitate communication by the council with the community. On that basis, I'm happy to have a vested interest in this council. It is offensive for the Mayor to denigrate me and my fellow councillors for doing what we were elected to do. Thank you.
Any further comment, councillors? Councillor Starner.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to thank Deputy Mayor Arnold for a very concise and succinct summary of what has been happening, and I fully agree with her. It's with some dismay that I actually read this letter from the Office of the Mayor that's in the agenda, page 138. Now, I've got a couple of questions about it. Under section 27(1)(a), the Mayor and Deputy Mayor shall accurately represent the policies and decisions of Council. As a spokesperson for Council, your response is not accurately representing the decision of the majority of councillors, and is stating that you have a number of concerns regarding the distribution and content of the questionnaire. I am aware that, 1, you were given notice of and invited to attend all discussions about the matter of proceeding with the Board of Inquiry into council amalgamation with Tasman and Sorell. You chose not to. You were sent a copy of the questionnaire prior to it being distributed publicly, and at no time did you raise concerns as to its content to councillors. Section 27C states that the Mayor's role is to oversee the councillors in the performance of their functions and the exercise of their powers. If you feel so strongly against the actions of the 7 councillors, why did you choose to express your concerns through a letter to a community group instead of speaking directly with the councillors involved? You also state in the letter that council will be asked to continue with the voluntary amalgamation process. This is inaccurate. We are being asked to consider the process, not to continue. It is my opinion that you, as the Mayor, putting forward your personal opinion and inferring that if we don't vote to go to the next stage of the process, we do not have the best interests of the community at heart. This shows disregard for council's capacity to have various differing opinions and still enter into constructive debate to reach a consensus. Your decision is clearly a foregone conclusion in favour of entering the process of possible amalgamation, and any dissent is viewed most unfavourably. You are in fact not acting in the best interests of the community by expressing your decision prior to hearing the final discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Steiner. Councillors, any further comment? No further comment. I'll sum up. Councillor Wisby.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. As stated in the background on this matter in the report, the purpose of consultation was to gauge in broad terms the general community interest in amalgamations. It was designed to ascertain what the community feel was on the topic, as to whether the community was for or against amalgamations, and also what the preferred options are should council amalgamate. I spoke with nearly 200 people over a week, and they either were not aware of the amalgamation discussion or local government board review, and the vast majority were not aware that there was an option for GSBC to remain as we are today. They felt the stay as we are option was not properly explained or an option in the survey. When the stay as we are option was explained to residents from Buckland to Bicheno, the overwhelming response was to do exactly that, stay as we are and improve on what we do. Some common responses received were Bicheno, Coles Bay and Swansea residents requested better representation from council as a whole and fairer distribution of capital and renewal works in their respective areas. As a collective, we can do that. Many from Tribunna and Orford were furious at the recent decision to employ contractors to undertake the duties of mowing nature strips, etc. in Orford and Tribunna, when previously this work was done by local people. The question was asked why we, as a council, allowed this to happen and why we didn't provide traineeships opportunities to local people, as every local job is so important in regional areas. Many were concerned about the potential loss of employment and centralisation of administration and outdoor works crew, particularly with the recent decision to start contracting mowing work in Tribunna and Orford and engaging Sorrel Council for the senior finance officer role instead of employing someone direct at Glamorgan Spring Bay Council. As a council, we do need to take a serious look at this. Many thank the councillors involved in the questionnaire for taking the time to speak to, listen and hear the concerns of residents and ratepayers. The council survey had 554 people respond, with 160 residents and ratepayers preferring amalgamation between Glamorgan, Sorrel and Tasman. Yes, 160 people preferred amalgamation between Glamorgan, Sorrel and Tasman out of more than 6,000 residents and ratepayers. In the Council's C-Speak publication just last month, the Mayor stated he is pleased to report that the results for the 2016-17 financial year once again demonstrates that Glamorgan Spring Bay Council continues to operate as a progressive, caring and well-performing council in the provision of services and financial management. He feels proud that we're able to report a surplus whilst maintaining rate increases to a minimum, capital expenditure at levels exceeding benchmarks, and service levels increasing yearly. Every key performance indicator for local government has been met or exceeded. From what I have read, the GSBC is in a strong position. In respect of the Board of Review and the Minister having the power to make the final decision, the idea to proceed and suck it and see, or we could go forward or we could go backwards, we need to give it a go, has been and is of great concern and caused angst in our communities and reduced confidence in our municipality. It's a huge decision we're making today, and we need to really consider what's said and make a decision for the future of our municipality. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wisby. Any further comment from councillors? Okay, I'll just... Councillor Woods.
With all due respect, Mr Mayor, as the mover of the motion to discuss, I will get the final say, so I'll hand it back over to you to have your say, and then I'll sum up if that's okay.
Thank you. In simple terms, we as a council, 18 months, 2 years ago, agreed unanimously to go through a process which councillors have spoken about. And that process was to see what would happen if there was proposed to be amalgamations. The process, I am confident, other people may not be, I am confident that we should be continuing the process to get the work done and get the results from the Board of Inquiry that will do all the work, as I've said to councillors previously. Those people are there as a board to do the numbers, come back with facts and figures, not hearsay, you said, I said, validation of community surveys, etc., etc. Now, if the councillors, in their wisdom, decide they do not want to continue what they unanimously agreed upon, where do we go from here? That's what you agreed upon. That's what you agreed upon, and that's all I'm facilitating. I have more faith than, obviously, the Deputy Mayor with reference to the Minister. He will do what he has said he will do. If there's an election, there's an election. There's somebody else in, somebody's out. All I'm saying is to get the best result, we need the work done. And then if we're not satisfied, we can pull out. We have cost the government thousands, in the hundreds of thousands, to go through this process, which we agreed to.
A point of order, Mayor Kent.
I haven't finished.
On a point of order under meeting procedures, you're actually misrepresenting council. We did not agree to go ahead. We agreed with a feasibility study, which we did. That's where we got to, full stop. So
yes, but then you knock back. Well, you say you haven't. You won't go through the next step, is what I'm saying, to find out what they have to say. And then we have the decision what we want to do. And if we don't want to merge or amalgamate, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But we said we'd go through a process. And that's, well, I'm sorry, that's what you both did. Anyway, that is my summarisation. Be it right or be it wrong, that is my point of view. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. Just briefly, as Mayor Kent says, you know, the government's already, well, the government, the taxpayers and ratepayers spent hundreds of thousands already on the report. And I've spent the last few days reading and rereading the KPMG South East Council's feasibility report, paying particular attention to option 3, which is the only one that's still on the table, basically. The KPMG study and ultimate assessment of the options had to be guided by 4 principles. These 4 principles had to be applied when considering all options. Principle 1, be in the best interests of the ratepayers. Principle 2, improve the level of service for communities. Principle 3, preserve and maintain local representation. Principle 4, ensure the financial status of the entities is strengthened. However, on page 20, under the heading Assessment of the Options, read the 4 principles, it says, and I quote, in the course of considering these principles, it became apparent principles 2, 3 and 4 can be more objectively assessed and supported by research, analysis and future model designs, whereas principle 1, that is, be in the best interests of the ratepayer, is more subjective and open to judgment. We have therefore developed an approach that proposes principle 1 may be best considered as a product of consequences of the assessments made in respect to principle 2, 3 and 4. In the next paragraph, it goes on to say, quote, in all options involving amalgamation, there will be a reduction in the number of elected members, and this is the trade-off for improved financial strength. I'm not sure about it being a trade-off, but I believe it does not support principle 3. That is, to preserve and maintain local representation. So within 2 paragraphs, on 1 page, principle 1 and principle 2 have failed to be realised. This is in the KPMG report, so we've paid a lot of money. This is already telling us that it's not in the best interests of ratepayer. Well, they're not going to consider that in that first. They're going to look at the other ones. In the report, it suggests there may be 13 single-member wards for transitional phase, but then it goes on to say, quote, our review of the literature and case studies from elsewhere suggest in the long run a consolidated electorate with no voting wards possess more benefits than risks of the alternative wards-based structure. So we've spoken about that before in workshops. So we'll go on to, once again in the KPMG report, they talk about the differences between the councils. Right, so that's the differences. All right, so there's a problem with the scopes. For example, the forecast population growth is concentrated in Sorell, and low growth in Tasman and a decline in GSB. This may sound like it might fit together because they're all a bit different, but they're complex and differing strategic solutions that would need considerable expertise and funds in each separate case for those areas to be resolved. Sorell also has a growing urban commuter community that is different from the rural communities of Tasman and Glamorgan Spring Bay. Yet another difference pertains to the service profiles. They differ by approximately 40%, which is in the graph in the report, because GSB differs that it has more tailored services or the services are relevant or not provided. And so these differences are significant. GSB on the GSB strategic outcomes, we are reasonably similar to that of Tasman in that we both focus on tourism, retention of youth to the area, employment opportunities and ageing well. Sorell's strategic focus is quite different. Sorell Council's priorities are to increase their rate base through building population in the fastest growing area in Tasmania, to attract new industry, to develop a consumer focused culture, and to develop a land acquisition strategy. Excuse me, Sorell's strategic outcomes do not align with GSBC's. This is in the report, not something I've made up or thought, just differences. The KPMG report mentions reforms can drive the economies of scale and scope. This concept is related to the premise that in a larger council, the costs are shared across a greater base. In the benefits of economies of scope include the following, once again in the report. Existing resources are able to undertake more value-adding or enhanced services, so overall there is a possibility of increasing levels of services. This is unlikely to happen in a significant way given the distances involved between the 3 councils. Strategy. Strategy is focused towards a more strategic perspective as it encourages councils to operate in a broader context. We've already seen that our strategic perspectives are different between Sorell particularly. Also, the third point on that is the pooling of knowledge and expertise through combining resources. This, of course, will be better progressed through resource sharing rather than amalgamation. I've just, I won't go on to those. Council might also be aware that there's been amalgamations, you know, in nearly every state. But I'd just like to point out that the Munro report that was from Queensland, when Jude Munro spoke in Hobart, she was saying that it hadn't really fitted well with the small rural, councils. That was also the finding in the South Australia Barnett Committee report as well. It says that report says committees, whilst in favour of retention of small councils for the sake of keeping community interest, the Barnett Committee sought reduction to the number of councils via forced amalgamation. So they weren't against amalgamation, but they were saying they don't fit with a lot of small communities. What I also are quite concerned about, and the Deputy Mayor Arnold brought this up, is it's not that I don't trust the Minister, it's nothing about personalities or whatever, but a question I've pondered is why, if the Minister received correspondence from Glamorgan Spring Bay, read the council decision that we made at a special meeting held on the 14th of July 2015, stating that GSBC was prepared to explore an independent analysis for merger, shared services, fee-for-service, or municipal boundary adjustments with Tasman, Sorrel, Breakaday, Clarence City Council, and the boundary adjustment options not considered in the So why were they not considered in the KPMG feasibility? There was the opportunity to put those all in the KPMG feasibility. So that didn't happen, and I'm wondering why that didn't happen. So what I would like to say is I find that that the report shows quite clearly that amalgamation, the KPMG report, does not stack up on the first three principles. And I believe if council work together cooperatively, then principle 4 can be realised without amalgamating. I also acknowledge that elected members need to engage with both Bishno and Coles Bay ratepayers and residents to find a solution to their dissatisfaction. So, as I just reiterated, this isn't made up. This is actually already in the KPMG report, and I actually think that to go further, particularly with the engagement we've had with the community in more recent times, is actually a waste of taxpayers and ratepayers' money. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that, Councillor Crawford. Just again, before we go any further, let me make the point very, very clear once again. I support council amalgamations. There is 29 councils for 500,000 people. The issue is not regional and rural Tasmania. I'm not interested for this council to be knocked over. I want the process of the work to be done to tell us what they intend to do. My view is you've got the City of Hobart, you've got 4 councils, Greater Hobart, they should be amalgamated before they get into regional and rural areas. You've got the City of Launceston in the same caper, North West Coast. 29 councils is not sustainable going into the future in Tasmania, my point of view. So in saying that, General Manager, would you like to make a comment or before I pass back to Councillor Woods?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. It disappoints me that we've been through a process since December the 8th, 2015, when this council decided that it would endorse the consultant and progress unanimously into the feasibility, and Councillor Crawford's gone through the report and got a lot of detail out of there. The view of the local government board is that they will flush out all that detail and they will do professional community consultation. So it's a bit like we were talking about in planning, where we're initiating something to the community. The local government board will deal with the community as a separate body, and they will report back to council, and this council will have a final decision. I mean, this council spent $32,000 of ratepayers' money on this process. The government spent $200,000. I mean, that doesn't take into account the officers' reports that they've had to go into this process, the amount of data, the amount of time. And the deputy mayor and the mayor and myself have been to that many meetings over this. It hasn't been funny. If the mayor wasn't there, the deputy was there, and I've been to every one of them.
Correction, Mr. Mayor, I never went to one.
Well, you replaced the mayor at one, yes.
I did, absolutely.
I think it was two actually, but we won't argue about that. These, as I said, they don't include the officers' time. Whilst Clarence has pulled out of the process, all mathematical, statistical and marking analysis will inform you that the chance of participants changing their mind because one party has withdrawn from the process is highly unlikely. It could have also been possible that one of the recommendations that the board could come to was not to merge with Clarence because of many factors, e.g. it's a city council, it doesn't fit into the regional aspect, all those factors, but we'll never know that now because, you know, by the feeling I get today, it'll be voted down. The board will look at all matters necessary, including extensive community consultation, to ensure that participating councillors have relevant information to make a final decision. The Minister has written to Council stating that all time the process is voluntary, including the final decision. At the moment, none of the information is available that the councillors are requesting in detail. It is now time to have this properly investigated by a professional board. The council will get another go at this, there's no doubting that, after the proper consultation. It is clear that the community wants this investigation and council should oblige.
Thank you. You want to sum up now, Councillor Woods? I think it's just starting to get repetitive now, so if you wouldn't mind.
Get it? Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really haven't got a lot to say. I've got a lot written here, but I've heard it, and as you said, it's getting repetitive. My problem with this whole process to date is that, in my opinion, it's been very messy, and with the inclusion or the Clarence pulling out of the process after we did the our community survey made a big difference with me. And then the talk of boundary adjustments with Bichno and Coles Bay going to break a day, and then all of a sudden I heard this week that Southern Midlands, well not this week, just recently, sorry, Southern Midlands Council, the boundary will be changed there, and also Sorell's having a grab at Richmond and Cambridge. These weren't parts of the memorandum of understanding that was signed or agreed to with regards to this process. That's where it's got messy with me, and I totally understand the withdrawal of from this to progress any further with this with our council. However, in saying that, the community, I feel, are very confused over where it is right now and what should be done. In saying that, Mr. Mayor, I will close. There's much more I could say, but I'm not going to.
Okay, so now we need...
I just have one comment. I haven't had a chance to speak.
Haven't you?
Right, no, just a short one. I won't say too much because what's been said has been said. All I can say that I did look quite through the...
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, sorry, and no disrespect for you, Councillor Farmer, but we've had plenty of opportunity for you to speak.
Well, I wasn't given the opportunity, actually. You just went straight back to Councillor Woods.
Well, you've finished, so if someone...
I've summed up. On the motion to discuss this,
okay.
I have summed up.
Okay, so now, Councillor Farmer, we're down for somebody to make a motion, I would assume.
I wasn't about to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to make a comment. But anyway, we can move on to the motion if you wish.
Well,
as I say, what's been said has been said.
I understand that. So where to from here, councillors?
I'd like to move a motion, Mayor Kent, that council resolves to not proceed with a local government board review and advises the Minister for Planning and local government of its decision.
Okay. So I'll put that motion, councillors.
No,
Got a second?
you need a second.
Sorry, do you second that?
I'll second it.
Yes, I thought so. So I'll put that motion. All in favour of that motion, show of hands. Councillor Woods, Councillor Steiner, Councillor Crawford, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Parker, Councillor Wisby, Councillor Farmer. Those against? Myself. The motion is passed. Thank you very much, councillors, for your time and effort. Moving on to motion tracking document, agenda item 8. Any comments from councillors there? No comments. I'll move on to agenda item 9. Questions without notice. Councillor Woods.
Mine is not necessarily a questions without notice. It's a statement with regards to what we just voted on, and I would like to make this statement that I personally have put a lot of time and effort and thought into the decision I made today in the best interest of our municipality.
Thank you. Any other comment, councillors? Councillor Crawford?
I just had a question. A concerned ratepayer spoke to me, it's a question to you, Mayor Kent, spoke to me saying, I have overheard a conversation that you were having in the Blue Waters Hotel, claiming, you said that you had attended meetings with the intention of selling the old council chambers, the marina and the commercial fisherman's wharf, and you were fully supportive of this. I was wondering, have you attended meetings regarding this matter?
No, there's been no meetings. These are just, as usual, rumours, pie in the sky, no meetings, no confirmation. The only thing that's on the go, as you all know, is the sale of the municipality council in Vickery Street. Councillor Farmer.
Just a question about notice, Mr Mayor. To you, I found out on the news last week that the state government was up at Tribunna and they granted some money towards the installation and the building of the new visitor centre.
That's correct.
Mr Mayor, I was at a loss that we, as councillors, weren't informed that was about to occur. And in the past, we at least to get an invitation to attend such items or such events. I never got an invitation. I only heard about it on the news the next day. I'm still at a loss. I thought that it was 75,000. I've been now told it was 750,000, and then I've been told it was 375,000.
Okay.
Can you just clarify the whole situation,
I
Mr
certainly
Mayor?
can clarify that for you.
Thank you,
I
Mr
have
Mayor.
the answer.
Good on you.
So it's $1 for dollar from the state government under their community grant, and the total cost at this point in time is $375,000 to do the refurbishment and the building. We got to pay $750. $750. Okay.
So there's 750 in total.
Yeah, we are in for 375, and the state government are in for 375. That was a grant. Okay, so obviously then, if that hasn't been brought up and you haven't been invited, it was the state government's invitation, by and large, for reasons best known to themselves. But I have no difficulty to make sure that councillors are fully aware going forward on what is happening. You may ask where we get $375,000 for, and I will tell you from my point of view, we have idle assets here that we will be endeavouring to sell, has been approved by councillors previously, and as you're aware, we've sold the Bicheno one for around that same figure, so the issue is an operational issue moving forward as far as I'm concerned.
And that, just on that comment, Mr Mayor, we will raise a crown of thorns as such the fact that we sell a property in Bishno and spend the money in Triabunna.
Well, I said to the people in Bishno that we may spend it in Bishno. I left it open, and given every opportunity, that's where it'll be spent, from my perspective. Councillors may make a different approach to that. So it's not entirely up to me.
No, that's
But
not.
we have the council chambers here. We may sell in a short foreseeable future. Well, there'll be money from there. And so it goes on. So I hope that answers your question, and I understand that you didn't get an invitation.
Well, it wasn't just me, I think all the councillors didn't get
Yeah,
an
well,
invitation.
okay, well, we'll make sure that, particularly if we're paying 375,000, that the councils get an invite. Can't guarantee it if they're going to do something on their own bat, but obviously we'll let councillors know. Thank you.
And just on that, Mr Mayor, there actually is a plan, like, apparently there was a plan given to
Yes,
the...
there is a plan.
I haven't ever seen the plan, but was it just a concept, or was it the actual...
General Manager?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, it was a concept that was submitted with a grant application.
Right. So it's not the final plan? No.
It's not the final plan.
Thank you. Mr Mayor?
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Mr Mayor, my question is to the General Manager. The recent rain event has again eroded fine silt from the property that's locally known as Solus. It doesn't appear that the straw bale solution has worked or is working. It's past time that an effective repair is undertaken to stop the silt going into Spring Bay, and could this matter be further investigated, please?
Through you, Mayor, the engineer, I believe, was on site either last Friday or the Friday before, looking at what the problem is.
If we could be advised of the outcome of that, please.
Any further questions without notice? Councillor Parker?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have approached by a member of the public. They have major concerns about the overflow of people going to Morol and parking their cars in Charles and Victory Street. Their concern is that last week they had to go to the butcher shop, had to park in Victory Street because there was nowhere else to park. Some of these cars are staying 2 or 3 nights. Yeah. Their suggestion was, why couldn't council liaison with Information Centre and the ferry operators and make available the area around the tennis courts as an overflow park?
General Manager?
Mr Mayor, that's part of the master plan that's been talked about. It's to cater for parking.
Can't we get something in action now to
are you referring to...
They're parking there now, Councillor Parker.
Yeah, are you referring to one of the retail outlets in Charles Street?
Sorry?
Are you referring to one of the retail outlets that have concerns that their customers can't pay?
No,
Okay,
no,
that's
no,
fine, because
no.
I have had that discussion
No, I
with
haven't,
the
no.
Works Manager, and we're looking at the possibility of putting a 25-minute sign there. But we're looking at it, we haven't.
Okay.
Works Manager will come back. Any further questions, councillors? Being no further questions, I'll declare the meeting closed at 6:55, and live streaming and recording